Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar in which Ian and I will be discussing business relationships with the media as we adapt to the new norm which we're operating in. My name's Stella, I'm an account executive here at Lislean PR. We are a non-sector specific communications agency that supports a range of clients across the South in building and protecting their relationships and connecting them with their audiences. I'm joined today by one of our senior advisors, Ian Murray. Ian is Executive Director of the Society of Editors and is Vice Chair of the UK's Defence and Security Media Advisor Committee. Hello, Ian.
Hello.
How are you doing today? You okay?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine. Yes, getting used to, as you say, the new norm.
It's a hard one to adapt to, isn't it?
Yes.
Difficult one. So just as a bit of background, we at Lislean PR work closely with Ian, often getting him to consult on a variety of our projects. So arguably at the moment, communication has never been more important given the current health crisis which we find ourselves in. I mean, from checking in with family and friends via FaceTime to our daily government briefing, we are just adjusting, as Ian mentioned, to the new normal of our lives. And we know that people are in their homes consuming a high amount of information daily, and therefore argumentatively, media and communication have never been more important. However, it is undeniable that at the moment, the media, like many other industries, have also been hugely hit by the pandemic. So if it's okay with you, Ian, if we could start there and just talk briefly about how the media has been impacted to date by COVID-19. I know we've got a few slides prepared to help us kind of go through this, which will be on the screen. So yeah, if we could start there, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks very much. And yes, the media has been affected very much. Everyone's been affected, of course, by this. And the media, though, falls into one of those categories where it's in a position where its role has, it's a cliche to say, never been more important than before, but it's certainly extremely important. Keeping everyone informed as to what is going on, trying to play its part in ensuring that it separates the wheat from the chaff, the conjecture, the speculation, bringing facts that are there, holding those in authority to account and saying, well, why are you making us doing this? Why is this going to happen? Why hasn't that happened? Playing that part in balancing between being part of the solution and not part of the problem, all those kind of things going forward in that way, keeping people connected through news in their communities. It's not just all about COVID-19, but obviously that's the most important thing on everyone's minds at the moment. And so that vital important role, but as with many other, of course, areas, it's been affected in that its revenue has been seriously damaged. Income for broadcasting only announced today, something like 40% down. It's probably far worse than that for newspapers at the moment. They're also seeing a huge reduction in their sales, and therefore pennies going over the counter in that way. So it's dealing with, we've got a lot of staff in the industry on furlough, but still having to carry out those vital roles. So it's been challenging for the newspaper industry, and at the same time there has been quite a lot of focus on, has the newspaper industry, has the broadcast industry, has the news media industry as a whole been playing the right role there? Can it be trusted going forward? So huge effect. 2,000 newspaper jobs have been affected. Those mostly are put on furlough. The Financial Times and Reach titles have hit record levels, on the other hand, of online audience. All news media have seen a massive hike in the number of people actually coming to them, which is great news in that one sense. But the other side, as I say, huge effect on the industry, and the news media industry, internationally has seen about 15 billion wiped off its value of the leading media companies, and I would say that easily 1 to 2 billion in this country has been seen to wipe off, and that is a big hole.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's such a difficult time, isn't it? Because a lot of industries are being affected like this, and media obviously isn't immune to that at all. But I guess, and it would be good to get your view on this, but from the flip side, from an agency point of view, we're kind of seeing with these changes, there's also real appetite for the positive news. I know that a lot of the clients I work across, the good news that they're kind of getting out there, it's being eaten up by a lot of our contacts in the media industry, which is obviously a positive thing, but then it's really difficult, obviously, like I said, with how many newspaper jobs have been affected in terms of this. It's a really difficult one, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Look, every newspaper editor, every news editor, every newsroom editor and a news editor, shall we say, doesn't have to be newspapers, knows that no matter what the crisis is, whether we've gone to war for some reason, whether there's a natural disaster, or whether in this case we've got a pandemic, something we've not lived through before, I think in really most of our lifetimes, then the public starts off by being extremely interested. It wants all the headlines, and it expects to get a lot of negative, very downbeat news, in a sense of quite concerning news. But then it goes to a phase where you get almost fatigue that fits in. The public still wants to know what's going on, but it wants to see behind the headlines, and it wants to not hear the same old, and it also wants positive news. It wants good news stories. It needs to be told that not everything is doom and gloom out there. It doesn't want stories made up. It doesn't want puffy stories, but it wants to see that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that we are rising to the challenge as a community. And that's why we've seen the public, of course, putting great store in applauding the NHS, care workers, essential workers, the folks out there ensuring that everyday life does manage to continue, and we are battling against this virus. They've become our heroes, our local heroes, quite rightfully. Didn't we always know that they were, of course? And so it's all that positive news. And it's important for your clients, for organisations, for bodies, for companies to actually look for that and to say, well, look, we've got a good news story to tell. And the good news for you in that sense is that, as I was saying beforehand, newsrooms are stretched. They've got a lot of people on furlough. They haven't got the time because of lots of other news that's going on to do with COVID. If they can be presented with well thought out, factual news, yes, of course, they'll check it. Yes, of course, it needs to be balanced, but it stands a pretty good chance of being used at the moment.
How do you see this media environment changing as we approach and head into kind of what's being floated by the PM as the second phase of COVID-19?
Well, going forward, when we were discussing earlier, we said we're getting used to the new normal. Well, the new normal is probably about to change, and will continue to change as we go forward. And there's all kinds of questions about what this is going to mean. Are we going to go so far then have to go back, and all the kind of issues? How will we go about our everyday lives, going to work with our families? Will our children go back to school? All those kind of things. Lots and lots of questions. And one thing that is certain is there will be no instant immediate answers, and the public will continue to be hungry for all kinds of information, and that's where there's a lot of collaboration that's going to go on between news media organisations talking to themselves. We've seen a lot of it pulling together. You've seen newspaper companies that you might have said are rivals and will probably go back to being rivals, actually pooling their resources and engaging with the public and saying, look, here we are, all of us together. There's a big campaign out there called All In, All Together, which is backed with £35 million worth of government money. And that's to do with newspapers, the local and national level, actually getting the messages across to try and get, because government realise that if it's just stark posters, stark adverts, very often this just washes over. But if they can make it human, and this is what newspapers and newsrooms and broadcasters do, it's humanise things, to tell the story in a way that you will understand it. So if the government has a message to get across about maybe social distancing has to continue in a certain way and that this is the way that it is, they'll turn to the storytellers in the media to do that. And there'll be a lot of emphasis again on trust. What is this trust? Very interesting survey out from the Reuters Institute quite recently of where does trust lie with the journalists? And I think there's a slide up on the screen there, and you can see the BBC journalists, not surprisingly, I've got a higher level of trust. ITV journalists, upmarket newspapers, a lot of trust with them, reducing with mid-market, and supposedly not so much in the red top tabloid newspapers. But you would find actually, if you drill down into that that's not necessarily the case, that the readers of those red top tabloid newspapers actually have a lot of trust because they read those papers. And there was a research done and published only this week from the Reuters Institute, which show how the public are thinking about this and where does their trust lie. Do they believe that the media are doing a good job? And at the moment, they're saying by 30%, yeah, we think they're doing a good job. 30% are saying we think they could do a better job, and the other 30% are saying actually you're being a bit too heavy on the government. And it's the same Actually, when it comes to do you trust the government, it's 30% say yes, definitely, 30% and 30% not at all. And it's kind of in that kind of way. So there's an awful lot to play there on trust. And going forward, we will see the media wanting to reinforce the mainstream media that, look, you can trust us. And here's the reasons why. When we give you news and information, we've checked it. We've found what the sources are. We trust these people that are telling us these things. So an awful lot of it is going to have to be like that. And a side effect of all this is companies have brought forward their subscription paywall initiatives that have been in the background, but an awful lot of local newspapers particularly, you didn't have to pay to read the content online. And what we've seen is a number of companies, considering NewsQuest, one of the biggest, have actually now introduced subscription paywalls for all of their daily newspapers. They've also brought them in now for about 45 of their large weekly newspapers. What they're saying is you can still get all the information and news on the COVID-19 crisis for free, but once you've reached a certain level of having seen about 20 to 40 stories in a month, we will ask you to pay a small amount then to continue to do it. And so they're actually now relying on people saying, actually, we do actually trust our local newspaper. We do value them, also our national newspapers, everywhere else. And we're prepared to pay a little bit for that.
That's actually quite interesting. And I just wondered if you could expand on the point about community activity. I know that we spoke in length actually about how there's obviously a lot of local news going on at the moment. I know from myself being down here, a lot of the groups online and in fact the local media reporting these good news stories. How do you think that will change throughout the process? If we're going into the second phase, do you think there'll be more increase on community activity? And like, how would that work with the subscription paywalls?
Well, yes, it's very interesting how it will work with paywalls that are there for subscriptions. With the community activity, what you've actually seen is with newspapers but also with broadcasters and radio, is that they've wanted to join in and they've wanted to underscore. I'm not going to say that suddenly they've gone, hey, let's make out that we're part of the community. They always have been part of that community. They need to underscore all that. And you've seen newspapers, newsrooms engaging. We've seen newspapers around the country actually saying, look, we know it's difficult to get for you if you're from the vulnerable, for you to get your groceries delivered. We can help you deliver those groceries with your newspaper. We've seen fundraising that's gone on a huge scale. Millions have been raised with all kinds of campaigns. And we've seen on a national level, we've seen national newspapers particularly pushing to get the NHS, our heroes there, recognised more, push for bonuses, for compensation when any of them are tragically killed by the COVID virus, and all those kinds of things. Now, this will continue, that community activity, because at times of crisis, what happens is that we pull together as communities. We've seen it probably locally.
Completely.
Probably some of the folks out there, you'll have seen it with your neighbours. You may not be able to actually shake their hands, but you're waving across the fence, and you're probably all on a social media link and whatever it is that's going on there. That's going to continue. That's going to go out there because this crisis isn't going to finish tomorrow. It's going to be ways of how do we all pull together? How can we continue to do that? And if, as a business, as an organisation, as a body, you're thinking about doing that, or you're already doing that, and you want to pull, tell that to the media, get the media involved. If you've got some great ideas about this, because they will be looking for those ideas. How can we extend this out, that we are not just being seen to play a part in the community and being part of the solution to all of this, but genuinely want to be part of that. So if you can go and say, look, we've got this idea, or we're doing this, can you assist us in that way? I think they'll be very receptive to that.
Yeah, completely. I think it's very interesting, actually, that given that the media landscape is obviously getting so much kind of attention at the moment, it would be interesting to hear your thoughts on how we can look from an agency perspective to kind of get the best coverage from our clients and ensuring that, I guess, their messages are heard once the lockdown kind of things are relaxed, if we're going to be seeing that in the next kind of few months. I mean, how do you think that's going to play out? Because I know on behalf of a few of my clients at the moment, obviously, if we're looking at reopening, how do we get those messages out to the media when there's obviously quite a high focus on the immediate things that are going on, the death tolls, what's going on, people need to know, but people are also going to need to know as we move into phase 2 about what businesses are really doing. And although there's been a lot of good kind of PR about what a business is doing in terms of making PPE or something like that, I can kind of see it moving more towards the direction of, okay, this is how a business is going to reopen, or this is our thoughts, and how we're going to keep you safe. What do you kind of think in terms of the media, how we could kind of grow those relationships, I guess, with our clients?
I think you put your finger right on it there. I think without any doubt, according to the surveys that are there, is that once the lockdown is eased, it's not going to suddenly disappear, but eased, there's still going to be reticence amongst the public. There's still going to be concerns about social distancing, and how can we go about our lives now? How can we go shopping? How can we interact with businesses? How can we have traders come into our homes? What do we need to do? All these kinds of things. How can we do that and still stay safe? What steps are they putting in place for us? If it's restaurants, if it's pubs, if it's all these kind of things, it's how seriously are they taking all of this? I think the media's emphasis is going to shift to some extent about that. Is to, are we all playing our part in this? But also, this hunger for information that we're there amongst the public, it's going to need, I think, folks like in PR and others who understand this is the best way to communicate this across. This is how we can do it. This is the kind of things that we believe the media are interested in, and the media are interested in actually passing on a lot of good information, helpful information, and where there is support coming from businesses and organisations, we've gone that extra mile. To assuage your concerns. We've gone that extra mile to do this. We are supporting you, we're supporting our employees. It's finding that where the messages are that actually works. And here's good news, and this is what we're continuing to do. All those kind of stories that are there. There has to be a warning light flashing there, that as we come out in times of this, the media is always, of course, got one ear listening to the voices that come along and say, look, that hasn't worked very well. We didn't get much support there. When we came along, we wanted this. And that ensuring that when you're putting the message out, or if you know what to do if the wheels begin to wobble, not necessarily fall off, but wobble, what are the messages that you're going to put across? Where are the danger points? As the media move out, as we say, we all move out of this lockdown and move into the new norm, whatever that is, and we travel along it, the responses are there. And the best way is always about having good working partnerships with the media, and that comes again through knowing the landscape and all kinds of things. Yes, the media are going to be looking to protect themselves. They need support. They need support from readers and from listeners and from viewers, and they need support from advertisers. So if you were an advertiser, please go back to advertising. They will like that completely. Mm-hmm.
I wondered if we could just expand, obviously, because here at Leslie, the main thing we do is reputation and things like that. If we could just kind of expand on the point of reputational threats there and what that kind of means in terms of going forward, really, because I think sometimes it's easy for us in the industry to understand things such as how important a reputation is. And I can speak from personal experience when I write articles about reputation, that I sometimes write it as if somebody just assumes what it is and how important it is. But often I find myself having to kind of explain how important that reputation is. And especially, I guess, throughout such an unprecedented global pandemic, how important that really is in terms of things.
I think so. You're quite right. And a reputation, someone very wise once said that it can take a very long time to build a good reputation and a very short time to have it destroyed. And it takes a long time to get it back. And it usually comes from the laws of unintended consequences. Something that comes up when you can see the obvious ones about, oh, well, look, if we're going to have to take this step and that's going to be bad news, let's put in place everything there so that we've got the answers when this happens. One would hope they'd have the common sense to engage organisations like Lizzie PR and others to actually know how to deal with that. But then there are the unforeseen ones. They didn't see that one coming, and there's an awful lot of that coming up here. The public are going to emerge from this lockdown, but they're going to expect a lot of support out there. They're going to expect people to be, organisations and businesses, to be on their side, to be helping them, and there's a lot of room, shall we say, for misunderstandings and all kinds of things there. And the reputations for saying the wrong thing, reacting in the wrong way, not reacting at all, and not knowing when the wheels are really wobbling and about to fall off. But there is real danger here as an anxious public returns to what it hopes will eventually be normal life. It can be fraught.
I think it's a very interesting case, isn't it? Especially as it's kind of so unprecedented, and also actually just as you spoke about that, it did remind me that during these times, and it reminds me of what I said in the kind of introduction, is that there's so much attention on the media at the moment. I mean, myself, this is my job anyway, but I know that even I'm checking the news constantly and things like that. So I think it will be really interesting to see where the land lies when we come out of this, in terms of when we go back to normal consumer habits of going out to the shops and things like that. And I think that's a really important point, that actually people are going to be expecting a lot more. I think almost the bar has been it's been raised significantly, even from small things like a few of our clients, their social distancing practices. They're going to have to communicate exactly how they're going to do things, exactly how safe they're going to be, and how they intend on doing those things. I think it's very interesting, and I think it's going to be a very interesting few weeks to come, and I guess we just have to take every day as it is.
I think you're absolutely right. It's going to be an interesting time that we go through. No, we haven't been through this before. We do not now know how the public are going to react, how we're all going to react when we're out there. We don't know whether we're going to throw ourselves into this or come out very, very cautiously. And it will be interesting to see how it goes. Only a fool would say, from a media's point of view, we know exactly how this is all going to happen. This is how it's going to be covered, because we don't know how that's going to happen. We do know that this appetite for news and information will continue. There will be all kinds of rumours and silly stories and false news going around on social media. I'm sorry, folks, if you're addicted to social media, then get off it. But if you read something there, please check it out. Please check it out. Go to the mainstream media, go to local newspapers, go to the BBC, go to others, go to there, because those there, they actually have edited news. And talk to professionals about and find out what is really going on. It's going to be grey areas, but ultimately, at the end of the day, never have we needed proper, well-researched, factful information.
Of course, and I think even that's for individuals, but even advice for businesses would be exactly the same, to kind of get their facts checked. And it's not the time for them to take their eye off the ball. I mean, we don't have to tell them that they do know that themselves. And I think it's just going to be a very interesting landscape that we're going to see.
It is. I mean, you just take one subject, Stella. You take the subject of, should we wear a mask or not? Are we required to wear a mask when we go into a store or a restaurant or even a business to go and see someone? Should we be wearing it or not? And that no one appears to be willing to tell us one way or the other. Yes, you should. Yes, you shouldn't. And even from country to country, it seems to vary with those kind of things. So you can see that's a bit of a minefield, and that's just one of many that's coming up. You wish that someone somewhere would say, right, that's it. That's decided.
It's never the case, though, is it? It's never the case.
That's not going to happen at this. Well, who knows? They might do on that. There's going to be lots of areas about that where there will be this area for misunderstandings, controversy, all kinds of things. And if a business or an organisation decides to go one way and say they need to explain why we're doing this. We want you to wear masks because. Thank you for your assistance. Thank you for your help in this. And doing it right so that it's clear cut and it's plain and it's with all that kind of thing. It's going to be an amazingly interesting and difficult time going forward, and no one knows exactly what's going to happen at all.
I know it's a very difficult one. I mean, I think that's probably a good place for us to wrap up there. But what I will say is that I think we got quite a lot out of this conversation. I think it would be interesting to know if people had more questions for us to answer. I mean, I'm sure we'd be happy to do a follow-up because, as you said, as unclear as this is, we can only do so much at the moment, and it's conversations like these, I guess, that provide a little bit more insight into what we can kind of predict and plan to the extent that we can. So I think we've definitely learned a lot, and thank you very much for your time on this call.
You're more than welcome. Good luck, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.